Hello again. First of all, I would like to thank WeConsult for giving me the chance to talk briefly about our experience at the AYLS and mainly shifting from physical to virtual events. So I would like to thank them also for the second time for the opportunity and as well as for uh, their um, their support either in the other previous editions or even in this next one. So before starting, I would like to. So my name is El Mehdi El Badawi. I'm the founder of the African Youth Leadership Summit. So mainly, I was involved in the national or the international projects like since 2010. So mainly, this session will be regarding our previous or our experience as we have been affected by the pandemic in the organization of the next edition, mainly the third edition of the AYLS, which is like 4-day summit where we gather all the African young leaders coming from different countries to discuss to discuss multiple topics. And mainly this year, we are going to talk about the power of digitalization for an Africa connected. So in this presentation or this webinar, we will be talking about um, four main topics. First, starting by why virtual events. Then we are going to talk about more. We are going to talk more about the pros and cons. And by then, we're going to move to discuss the different elements to have like a virtual events, and then finally some tips and tricks. And then if any one of you guys have a question, so if you are following on Zoom, you can type it in the chat section or just comment if you are following us on the different social media channels. So let's get started. So our starting point for this presentation is that we all know that the current pandemic has immensely affected not only the events industry, but also the economic, education, and different sectors who have been affected. So, but let's be more, we will be more focusing on, in this webinar, on the event sector or event industry. So as we have been following in the couple months or maybe the past month, that so many different events, big events, so we're not talking only about like trainings, workshops, but we're talking about international events, starting from summits to movies, festivals, to sport events, to and other ones. They were all maybe either canceled or postponed. And the other thing is that we have to agree on something which is the virtual events is not something new. Like for the moment, some people, they just thought about like, wow, there is something called virtual events. So let's switch to virtual events. So it is something which is very old, but we can believe or we can feel that people, they become more aware about having virtual events as an alternative so that they can sustain and continue their work or their projects. So mainly in this presentation, we will be talking about these two main things, but somehow more in the practical side so that we can be more effective and we can learn so many other things. So why this is important? So I have listed like three main reasons. The first one is that we do not have any other choice. So either, for instance, for the AYLS, for the African Youth Leadership Summit, either we are going to cancel this year edition or maybe postpone it to next year, which is something that as the organizational team, it is something which is difficult to decide or to take such important decisions. So everyone finds we found ourselves obliged to think about something more, something like to think about alternatives rather than postponing or canceling. The second is that virtual events gives like more accessibility, which means it's like so many other people can join, maybe due to the reasons like for the visa or the travel cost, accommodation, and so on. So the virtual events makes engaging people more easy somehow, or maybe more challenging, but it is more gives more accessibility to everyone to join your events or our events. And the last thing is that financing and budgeting opportunities. So definitely switching between physical event is not like switching or organizing a physical event is not that costly as a virtual event. So for regarding this point, it is a bit like we can consider it as an advantage, but also we can count it as a threat or as an obstacle, especially for the commercial agencies or like uh, startups or enterprises that works on this events industry. So maybe we can. It has like good and bad effects in terms of finance and budgeting. So we are going to discuss about this furthermore in the next slides. So let's reflect somehow on the pros and cons of the virtual events. So one of the pros is accessibility, accessibility, which means yeah, we gives the opportunity to different people, different countries, different backgrounds to join without like moving from their own house or home. So they just need like having good internet or have a smartphone or laptop, then they can join easily. Secondly, inclusivity, and also cost effectiveness. That's why we were talking in the last slide about like the budget and so on. For instance, if I'm going to pay like 10,000 euros for an event, so when I uh, when I switch to a virtual one, it will be like less in terms of costs. So I won't have much expenses, or I won't have I won't need to pay so many people who can work and so on, like hotels, transportation, and so on. So we are talking about cost effectiveness. The fourth thing is easy measurement impact. So when we talk about everything like digital, it is something that we can measure easily in terms of the number of participants, the number of views, registration numbers, collect feedbacks. So a virtual events or something virtual makes the impact measurements much easier than the physical ones. Another thing is that less distraction. So in the virtual events, people somehow they are more concentrated about the topics, the sessions content, and so on. So in the virtual event, there is like less destruction than the physical events. And finally, fluid networking. So in virtually the networking, the exchange between the participants, the interaction, for instance, between the speakers and the participants is much easier. I'm not saying like the physical is not, we cannot find like fluid interaction or networking in the physical events, but it is more challenging, especially when we talk about like events where like there is more than 1,000 participants. So that makes it like very difficult mission to do. So let's move on to the cons. So one most important challenge that everyone is facing is that the technology is not available to everyone, especially for people in the rural areas or marginalized communities. So we are still yet we are in 2020, but most of the communities, for instance, in Morocco, they don't have a good access to internet, or maybe they don't have smartphones, or maybe they don't have laptops. So there is this gap between the technology. There is this gap of like expectation and the technology, the technology availability. This is this is one of the cons, or maybe the challenges that the event organizers are facing. The second, and as I was saying in my previous slide, is that having a virtual event is lost for the commercial events. For instance, so many agencies, like for instance, let's give the example of travel agencies who were being like very affected by the pandemic. So for travel agencies, the main activity is to organize trips. So there is like quarantine, people cannot go out. So this is definitely going to affect. And when we say about like switching between the physical to virtual, means definitely decreasing the fee of the participation. Let's for the AYLS, for example, we had as we aim to cover all the expenses, as we don't have sponsors or partners, so we had to decrease the fee of the participant like 95%, which is somehow, if we compare the AYLS to another event agency, it is a big loss. So yeah, so one of the other cons is mainly for the commercial event agencies, they are going to lose like a lot of money. The third thing is that the lack of excitement. So everyone, or whenever there is an event, people are excited to meet someone in person, to meet like their role model in a person and have a conversation, maybe during a workshop or like during a dinner or maybe during like a party or cultural evening. So in the virtual events, that we cannot feel that physical attachments, that physical atmosphere present in the virtual events. But yet it depends. For instance, in the wireless, we still do feel this excitement. Like, yeah, we're having 4 days of summit sessions and people are excited to join. And the last thing is that it is switching to virtual events, it is sometimes costly. When I say costly, it's mainly like in terms of the technology that we are using for these events. Not all the NGOs, for instance, or not all the organizations have enough budget to cover, for instance, like Zoom technology, or maybe go to Merin technology or whatsoever. So we're going to go back to this point in maybe the next slide. But in general, sometimes it is costly, but it yet depends on your expectations or the services that you are looking to provide to your participants. But yeah, yet it is always costly, especially if you don't have enough money. Move on. So when we talk about like an event, virtual event, we have like a checklist, like mandatory elements. So we cannot talk about like, especially here, we are talking about like big events, like not like organizing a webinar or we're organizing a master class or sharing video or whatsoever. So, but we're talking about like professional events or big events, mainly international ones. So I have listed here like some of the mandatory elements. So starting by the event website, event registration, video production. So for instance, video production, we ask the question that does all the speakers have a good camera or good video camera maybe in their laptops. So if we want to guarantee a good quality or video quality, we need like to ensure that everyone has the right materials to be used. Second, high quality internet. So definitely this is the most like, even we can consider it even important than having a website. So the internet is mandatory. It's one of the main important things to have in virtual events. Another point is adaptable technology. So adaptable technology, as we know that not everyone, or let's say not all the smartphone supports a type of applications. Maybe Zoom can work on some smartphones, but it cannot work on others. Maybe other applications they can have or the technology used in the virtual events, they allow you, for instance, to share your screen, while other applications doesn't allow. So we need to find a technology that which will be suitable to all the users that we are targeting, or all the speakers that we are inviting and all the participants we are hosting. So this is also extremely important. Another thing is the electronic materials. So when we talk about virtual events, people are more aware or more interested to have like graphics, presentations, colors. Most of the virtual events, people get bored if they see like for 2 hours the same person speaking. So it's mandatory to think that it's mandatory, or it is necessary to think if the organization has all the different materials, starting from the presentations, videos, audios, pictures, are all available. So this needs to be like extremely important for the organizers to avoid any kind of bugs or challenges maybe in terms of the contents. Another thing is polling. So in my previous slide, we were talking about like the pros of virtual events is that it makes the impact measurement extremely easy. So maybe polling, feedback collection are the most important thing, or maybe the most interesting things that we can use to measure impact. So as organizers, we need to think about like launching polls, or maybe a survey to get feedbacks, maybe after each session, or maybe at the end of the summit or whatsoever. So these two elements need to be taken into consideration. And also newsletters and reminders. So as we know, we all receive like thousands of emails a day. Maybe we are extremely busy by different things. So the organizers, they need to set up like a system or application or anything that will make people updated about the progress of the event, updated about the speakers, the sessions, and so on. So it is necessary to have such technology involved in the event organization. And last thing is that the session recordings. The session recordings gives you the possibility to record all the sessions, and maybe by then you can upload them either on your website, YouTube, so that you can give the other participants who missed the chance to join another chance, so that they can follow and watch the session. So for us, these are the main elements that needs to be present, but we can list other more elements, but mainly these are the main ones. Next, so we move in. So regarding the technology platforms, so I have listed like 3. There is so many platforms, and maybe after the pandemic, everyone started thinking about creating an application or application, like a video application or something like that. But in this webinar, I'm going to compare between three main ones, starting by Zoom to go to Meeting and StreamYard. So all these three are like the most used ones. Maybe Zoom at the beginning, which is maybe it's a project that was starting in maybe 2009 or something, but they got more attention after the pandemic as everyone started using Zoom, and also Zoom had to change some of the privacy policy, security, and those things. Uh, so we're going to discuss on each one. So, so for instance, Zoom, they provide like different packs. So we have the basic, which is free, and the pro, and the business, and enterprise. So for the basic, it's free, but you always get like limitations in either in terms of the number of participants, or also in terms of the minutes or the time duration, um, the time duration for your meeting. For instance, like 40 minutes per meeting. And as long as you are extending the offers or the services, you are required to pay more. And that's why we said sometimes it is costly for some NGOs or organizations. Um, but still, Zoom, it's like extremely effective and very practical as we are using it today in this webinar. The next one is GoToMeeting.com. So as we see, they don't provide a free trial, let's say, or free version. So starting from $12 to, we don't know. But as said, all these platforms, they use the same model. As long as you're extending the services or the number of participants or the number of hosts, as long as you are required to pay more. And the last one, which might be very practical for NGOs that they don't have much funds, is StreamYard, which gives you like free version, like unlimited minutes. You can make screen sharing, banners, colors, and green screen, and different things. But it depends always on the organizational team, how they see their event will be. And then they need to think which platform is more practical for our needs. For instance, for us, like either in the African Youth Leadership Summit, we have decided to use Zoom as we feel more comfortable using its services, and it is easy. It's very easy to use, which is like something that everyone needs or looking for. Most of the platforms also gives you the opportunity like to pay either monthly or annually. So whenever you pay annually, you will have like a discount, or you are going to save some money. So which is also very practical for those who don't have much funds. Move on. So maybe this is my last slide, but just to reflect on the different things that we need to think about while organizing a virtual event. So I have listed here some questions, which are, as organizing, you must know the answers. So starting by, does the content will be live, on demand, or mixed? So means, are we going to provide the content for free live, or only like on demand? For instance, like the Hollywood movies recently, they launched the movies on demand only. So you need to pay, then you get a version of the movie or the session, or maybe both. Have you created a guide for attendees? Which means, have you made like a document that you explain to the participants how to join, the number, the session ID, the password, how to use the platform, how to use the application, and so on. Next, what are your KPIs for the event? So what are the different variables that you are going to use or adopt to make the impact measurements? Maybe, as said before, either the number of participants, the number of subscribers, the number of views. So you need to list all the different KPIs you want to discuss or you want to study and to have by the end of the event. What happens if you or one of the guests faces connectivity issues, which is somewhat something that no one wants to to face or go through. So, for instance, so what is the alternative? What is the solution? So this is extremely important to ask yourself as organizer as to make sure that all your guests have a good internet bandwidth. Another question, will you charge for your event or offer access for free? So if you have funds, then how much you're going to offer or to charge the participants or attendees. And if it is free, yeah, then it is free. Or if it is free, how are you going to cover the expenses, let's say, for the technology used? Another one, how long will sessions be? For instance, for the physical events, we can have like people for one day, but when we go or switch to virtual events, it will be very challenging to keep people in front of their desks and laptop or phone or smartphone for more than 2 to 3 hours. So also here we need to check our agenda and to check our agenda and check how many hours that the sessions will be. Does your organization have a virtual meeting solution? So this also is important. Maybe after answering on all the previous questions, then the organization needs to think either going to use Zoom or going to use GoToMeeting or StreamYard or whatsoever. And the last thing is that does your organization have staff members can support and manage the technical aspects of virtual events, which is also important. So you need to have a team of people, to have a group of people who are familiar with using such applications and familiar people who are familiar with the technology used, maybe with presentations and all those things, so that they can monitor the presentations and the sessions without having any technical issues or whatsoever. And maybe here you can maybe check with We Consult team so that probably they can help and support in terms of technicalities. Um, so this is the so this is the end of the webinar. I don't know if you have questions maybe, so that I will be able to answer before closing. And as the AYLS, I would like to thank Masterpiece Morocco and the We Consult as our prime supporters and uh, prime supporters and partners. Meanwhile, I invite you to check the website ayls.mpmaroc.mif in case you're interested about joining the event, the summit next September. And maybe you can email us if you have any propositions of partnership or any kind of requirements. Yeah. So maybe we can wait for 2 to 3 minutes. If someone has a question, then we can close the session. So we have a question. Uh, what is the best way to encourage potential party? So what we have a question: what is the best way to encourage potential participants and engage them? What is what issues can we face when seeking for a partnership once we pivot to virtual events? So actually, these are good questions. Mainly, the first one is always is always challenging, but we do believe as the AYLS that the power of sharing powerful stories, sharing or making a good context and make people feel that they are involved, for instance, in the development of the continent, and that youth, they are the main future decision makers, is a way to make them more encouraged to attend and engage them in any kind of cause, not only the African Youth Leadership Summit, but in any different cause. For the other thing is that what issues can we face when seeking the partnership? I believe that I believe most of the depending. So when we pivot to virtual events, our partnership mindset needs to be changed. So, for instance, like for virtual event, I'm not going to ask for money, but let's try to ask for more knowledge or more technicalities, support, technical support, or something like that. But always when it comes to the event or the organizations seeking partnerships or funders, it's always challenging, but it is a way that gives more opportunities maybe in the future so that they can get as many partners as possible. But it depends on how we are reformulating our requests and how we are expressing our needs um, to the ones who are trying to reach. So I don't know if you have any other questions, so that we can close the uh, the sessions. But once again, don't hesitate to check to check out our Facebook page and our website for more information about the summits, and maybe don't hesitate to reach We Consult in case you need any kind of supports, either in terms of technicalities, mentoring, training, and so on. So I will give like 1 more minutes for questions, then we're going to close the session. Okay, guys, thank you for your time, for your participation, and for your comments. So stay safe and thank you, everyone. Good day.